Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and joining me again, Grapeviney. Good evening, Grapeviney. How are you?
I'm really well, Andy. Thank you. Hello, and hello to all the Demonlanders out there.
Yes, hello to the Demonlanders, and I will start off by saying apologise once again that we won't be able to take any calls tonight. I'm still on the road, and we'll be back next week, and we'll get those phone lines open. But if you do want to interact with us, you can join us in the chat room while you're listening live. That's at demonland.com/podcast. So if you are listening to this live and not a recording of it, jump in the chat room and you can ask us questions, interact with us, and we'll read anything you say, or most things that you say, providing it can go out on the air. We'll read it out for you. Grapeviney, well, the hoodoo is finally broken. I know we don't believe in the hoodoos, but there was something, a monkey we had to get off our back, and we did it quite comfortably in the end.
Was there a special ceremony afterwards to sort of mark the fact that it, to quote Tony Abbott, is dead, buried and cremated?
Well, don't you have to do the ceremony beforehand in order to...
Maybe there was one before and one afterwards.
Yeah.
It was good to get the win, and did it comfortably in the end. Took a little while to get going, conceding the first 4 goals of the game.
So we did it again. We did it again. We had a lapse. Now, was it a lapse? Was it a slow start? What happened? How did you see those first 4 goals going down? What happened?
Look, I don't know, but I'm not too worried about all this, even though I said the week before that if it happens again, Simon Goodwin should be officially worried. But really, there are momentum swings in every game, not just in Melbourne games, and it's not unusual for teams to kick 3, 4, 5 on the run. So if you're sort of looking more broadly at the competition and not just at Melbourne games, it's happening all the time.
Yeah, we saw it in the Collingwood-Carlton game. Carlton got off to a great start. We saw it, West Coast got ahead of Geelong, and then Geelong had quite a number of goals in succession to get back, and then West Coast kicked 4 quick ones at the end. I didn't watch all the games this week, but it does happen in other games. So you're right. You can't be... you want the team to be switched on for 120 minutes, but it's not going to be. It's just about mitigating, the amount of goals kicked in succession.
And you're right. And we're early in the season, so it's still, we're still getting our line and length right on who sits where in the pecking order. People were a bit disappointed in the win over Brisbane the week before, but Brisbane ran Port Adelaide to within a goal in Port on the weekend. So is Port overrated or Brisbane better than perhaps what we thought? So it's still a bit early to tell just where everyone sits. But, we've had a reasonably easy start to the year and we're sitting pretty comfortably at 2-1.
Yeah, 2-1. We're the highest Victorian team. That's the first time we've been the highest Victorian team, I think, since round 21, 2006. So that's another tick we can cross off in breaking these embarrassing records or whatever. We've got that thread on Demonland. But also we're the highest scoring team, I believe, in the league. So that's also a good thing to have. And hopefully we can keep that up.
Yeah, it's funny because people have sort of said that the forward line isn't functioning properly, yet we kicked, 18 goals, 15 or 18, 16 or something on the weekend.
And that is with Jesse Hogan only contributing one of those goals. So, you got to say we aren't finding it hard to score. We might talk, we can talk about it now. Do you think we needed another tall? And we can talk later whether we think another tall is going to come in. But do you think we needed another tall? I know, obviously, we're able to kick goals. But I
really like this idea of Hogan rotating with Petrarca and even Oliver.
Because there were
it keeps shifting.
There were a few times,
and Sorry, go
No,
on.
I just thought there were a few times when Jesse had the ball up the ground, and I thought, well, who's going to get the ball down the forward line? And yeah, when we were bombing it in, I think that it's harder. But when we did find, one of our smaller guys on a lead, or finding some space, it seemed to work really well. So I think we've got to stop bombing it in if we don't have the tall options down there.
We're definitely more efficient going inside 50 this week than we have been in the 2 weeks prior. So, and look, there was a different setup this week with no Peterson in there. So, if you kick 18 goals, it's worked, hasn't it? No doubt it can work better, but I can't really see them changing it this week.
Now, we had two inclusions last week, and both of them, I think, had quite an impact. Definitely Dean Kent. It was a very welcomed return for him back into the forward line. He kicked 3 goals, provided plenty of run. I think he had a couple of tackles as well, which I think he was criticised of last year. What did you think of Kent's return?
He couldn't have done more than he did.
Yeah.
As you say, snagged a few.
I thought he had more tackles. He had 1, but yeah.
He was only recorded with 1 tackle.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought he had more, but I'm looking at the stats.
He did get a free kick for that. That was a solid. That was a solid chase and bring down. So that's the one that stands out in the mind.
That's
Obviously,
why
there was only 1, but
yeah.
I think just his work rate and his pressure was greater than what we've seen in previous seasons, and it needed to be. I think Dean Kent is drinking at the last chance saloon at the moment.
Yeah, well,
and if this is the way he's going to play, then he'll be hard to knock out of the team.
Yeah, we've got no shortage of small guys that can come in the team, and with the performance of Casey, which we'll talk about a bit later on, there's plenty of guys really knocking on that door. So he really needed to perform, and 3 goals too. That's a pretty good 20 disposals. It's a pretty good return to the team. So yeah, well done, Dean Kent. And yeah, I want to see more of that. And we know he's got a lot of pace, so he's got a lot to add to this forward line. We also had Frosty return to the team, and I was quite impressed with a number of his marks that he took, and I was happy with his return, and it certainly freed up Lever to play a different game than he's been sort of forced to play in the last couple of weeks.
The back line functioned well. Frosty was okay. Made a few of those heart in your mouth dashing runs out of defence. But that all sort of worked together pretty well. Ben Brown kicked a few, but only because he got given a few ridiculous free kicks, and I know that the umpires have been on everybody's mind in the post match.
There were a couple.
Frostel's stay, I would have thought.
Yeah, you think so? There were a few incidents actually with the umpires that I was absolutely baffled by, and a couple of the Ben Brown ones. But there was also Goldstein got a free kick because he elbowed someone in the face. I think he elbowed Lever in the face. And then there was down the other end of the field where Kent barely scraped someone as he went by. I don't think there was even any contact, and Fritsch had taken the mark, and was subsequently had to give up the ball to a North defender for a free kick.
I was staggered at that one, and absolutely infuriated because it was a great mark from Bailey. He was running back with the flight of the ball. There were 2 North defenders that he was running into, and he was just fearless. It was just a chest mark, but that's one of those gutsy ones where you're going back with the flight of the ball, and so to have a certain goal taken off our hands was annoying to say the least.
So there was also I was quite impressed with Tom Bugg as well. Kicking was it an aberration? Him kicking 4 goals, one, and the one that he missed was an absolute sitter. And I think
Yep.
he was right on half time. He was running in as the siren went, and I would have thought he would have stopped when the siren went and go back and sort of take it again. I'm not sure if the siren sounding sort of affected him in a way. I don't know. But I was impressed with the rest of his game, and I must admit, I didn't think that he would kick most of those goals because of his record, but he did. He sunk 4 of them.
Yeah. Yep. The one he missed was an absolute shocker, wasn't it?
It definitely was.
20 out straight in front. So
he's not the guy you want with ball in hand, siren sounds,
No.
grand final, 5 points down, straight in front. Definitely not. But I really
No.
like him. I think he's earning his place in the side. If he can keep kicking straight, he definitely will. Because 4 goals from a small forward is fantastic, and it's sort of hard to sort of man up on those type of guys. And yep. He's doing all the right things.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Someone in the chat room, who was it? Drunken167 mentioned Clayton Oliver. He was heavily tagged, still got 20 disposals, was thrown into the forward line sort of late in the game, was able to get 2 goals within 2 minutes. He's going to start getting heavily tagged, so we've got to sort of work. I think the coach has to be a bit quicker in sort of doing something, and perhaps moving him into the forward line is a good move. To break those tags. What do you think?
Yeah, and particularly once we get Viney back,
Yeah.
then if attention goes to one player, then it's incumbent upon the others to step up effectively, and we've seen him go forward successfully. He's pretty strong in the air for his height. So this sort of chopping and changing with Jesse and Track and Oliver can help break those tags up and disrupt sort of the opposition. So we're on to Goodwin's penchant for sort of flexibility in the playing group is paying dividends, I think.
Well, I think there were a lot of people sort of questioning the selection. Were questioning the selection table moves. We're not having the big guy, not having another big guy down forward. People saying he's crazy, but it worked. Are we not giving the coach enough credit? We've got to sort of probably have a bit more faith.
Yeah, yep. Look, it's ridiculous to be doubting Goodwin at this stage or on this record. We're 2-1, admittedly not against great opposition.
Could easily have been 3
But he's 3 games into the second year of his coaching career, and things have been tracking okay. So I don't know why there would or should be criticism of Goodwin, notwithstanding the fact that some of the decisions at the selection table have been interesting and surprising. But as you say, they've sort of worked for the moment, or we haven't really been too exposed.
Yeah. So also Hogan, I was extremely impressed with his game on the weekend. He's just getting better and better. Obviously last year was a terrible year on and off the field for him, and obviously the off-field stuff affected the on-field stuff. He's just relishing the game. He's got a massive engine. He's playing so well up the field, and it was one of the best on ground for me.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And as you say, if we just need more Jessies, if we need Jesse leading out to Jesse, because he's a really good user of the ball. so when he sort of gets it upfield, he can really be quite damaging. So yeah, he's in great nick, and seems to be enjoying his footy too, which is great.
It's early days at the moment, but if you see if this form continues and he just gets better and better, can you see an All-Australian in his future this year?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I've always thought he was going to be a great player, but I think he's going to exceed my expectations. I think he's better than even I thought he could possibly be. So, yeah.
Well, my expectations of him was he'd be in that sort of goal square forward, taking these massive marks and kicking goals. But his game it's a totally different game to what I ever expected that he would play. Initially I didn't see him as that sort of centre forward, but now he's sort of a bit of a ruck rover, sort of around the ground, and obviously can still come forward and do what he does. It's a well-rounded footballer.
It's totally different. If you look at the first few games from 15?
Yeah.
He was taking contested marks, and obviously sort of stationed at full forward, but his role has just completely changed since then. I actually miss the contested marking aspect a little bit.
That's why we need two Jessies, one up the ground, one down the ground.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's had Max has sort of been going down there too, so on occasions he's sort of got Max to contend with too. But his role now is entirely different from what it was when he first played.
You mentioned Max Gawn, so we may as well go to him next. Just also is definitely in his 2016 All-Australian form. He's just killing it at the moment. There's a lot of talk at the moment about this golden era of ruckman, and a lot of the footy shows are all talking about the ruckman, and they are talking about Gawn, but they're talking about a few others as well, and I reckon Gawn is ahead of all of them. So it could be just my bias, but I think they're talking Grundy, Nick Nat. I think Gawn's better than all of them.
Yeah, I agree that he's back to his All-Australian form, and I expect he'll play this way for the rest of the season. There's just no reason that he won't keep dominating. He just looks sort of right in the zone at the moment.
Now,
I can't see it changing. Can I just mention two highlights from the weekend?
Sure.
One was Jeffy's interception.
Yes.
Which was a great steal and goal, and the other was Bailey Fritch's snap around the corner from the boundary line to find Jesse in the square, which was a superb bit of skill. And, on the back of what we talked about before, that great contested mark that was taken off him, he seems to have it all, Bailey Fritch, doesn't he?
You look at his stats, and there's nothing impressive about the stats, but when he does get the ball, he really has an impact, and I'm really liking him. I can sense that there's going to be a game where he kicks 4 or 5, and he'll just be unleashed. He's a certain starter now in my mind, unless he really has a bad patch. But I'm really liking what I see of him, and I see good things in the future for him. Really reads the ball.
I
well.
also can't see him going out of the team, and I think his composure and skills are better than Nibbler, Harms, and Hannon too. So in terms of and Bugg, so in terms of that half forward role, I reckon he's sort of, pretty much at the head of the queue there.
Yeah, he's definitely in there. Now, what did you? We were talking about Max, but obviously Max can't ruck all day without another tall man, without Tom McDonald in the team at the moment, without Peto. We I can see the only other ruck hit out stats we had were Harms, and I think I recall Petraka going up in the ruck a couple of times. Do you see that as being something that could cost us because we don't have another big man to sort of take the rucking duties when Max has to have?
Well, I don't know who. I mean, I know Harms did go up. I don't know who he was rucking against at that time. Hawthorn's obviously got McAvoy. I don't know who does their
secondary ruck.
Who does their secondary, whether it's Show and Makers or one of the other tools, but.
I definitely recall Petraka going up against Majak at one stage, and I thought that was quite funny. That potentially could. I don't think it'll cost us a game, but we sort of sometimes when Max goes off, sometimes that's
we lose momentum.
Yeah,
and I think also that can also depend on the midfield mix as well. Once you take Clary out of there, your chances of winning the clearance drop somewhat.
Yeah.
Given how good he is. So.
I really liked Salem's game for most of the game. He does have quiet periods during the game, but he's got a bit of mongrel in him. He uses the ball really, really well. I really liked his game this week. I thought it was his best of the year so far.
Yep. As his critics on Demonland, Christian Salem.
He does. Even after this week's game, still got the same critics.
Yeah, and people saying, "Oh, well, why is it taking him so long to get professional or get the message?" Or
well,
I think people forget. Sorry,
there was an article about his exit interview last year, and sort of that was a bit of the kick up the bum. He did extra training sessions and all that. So, forget the past. We're looking at the future now. So as long as he's got his act together now.
I think people just have unrealistic expectations, and I think sometimes we forget that these kids, when they come into the club, they're 18 or 19, and they're not mature. And if you think back to how you were in the first year of your job as an 18 or 19-year-old, you just, footballers develop at different rates, obviously, but it takes time for, an understanding of the work ethic and the professionalism and those things to sink in. Even if they're told to you, it's not until you grow up a bit till you really understand the problem. And I think most players, the first thing that they'd be focused on is getting a game. Then it's becoming a regular in the team. It's only after those things happen that you then start to think, all right, well, what are we really in this for? We're in this to play finals, and how do we go about doing that? So, those stages would take a number of years to go through. So it's, you've got to give players in most instances, a few years to mature, and that includes listening properly to the messages that are being given to them and the lessons being handed out. And as someone has just pointed out in the chat room, he's had all sorts of...
the thyroid issue. He's had hammies or whatever he's had.
Falling bricks.
Yeah, exactly. He uses the ball so well, and as he gets more and more touches, we've been screaming out for good ball users. So he's a guy that does know how to use it. So I'm happy with him. We can talk about two other players that often get criticism on Demonland from anonymous people. That's Wagner and Oscar McDonald. I thought Wagner had his best game for us this week. I think he's shown improvement in every game, and he's starting to cement his place in the team. If he continues playing like that, then we might be seeing more and more of him, and he might stamp his name on a position on the field.
Paul Roos was really bullish about Wagner, and I must admit I didn't really see it at the beginning, but this is going back a couple of years ago now, but certainly starting to see it now, and he's in that sort of right size mix for the defence. So there's quite a bit of versatility and flexibility back there.
And Oscar McDonald now, Brown kicked 4 goals, but there were a couple of free kicks he got that just were not there. Not in my mind. I could just be using my one eye in that, but yeah, I thought he had a good game. I think I don't know. I think he's starting to also find his feet in this team. He does have a lot of detractors, but the coach is definitely persisting with him. He all year was playing him, and he's not going anywhere. So, yeah. What did you think?
He had a good game. He's had a great start to the year. He's probably been the best, most consistent defender over the course of the 3 games. So, yep. Tick.
All right. We said, our defenders sort of are starting to fight. Hibbert had a better game. I thought Jetta had a better game than he had been playing the last couple of weeks. What about Melksham? Melksham's been, I think, a little bit quiet. I don't think he's in the dropping territory, but, there are a lot of guys sort of, knocking on the door. So, it's a good thing, good problem to have, and we'll talk about the players from Casey shortly that are knocking on the door. One guy I forgot, and we shouldn't forget him, Jonesy, I thought as well, was superb at times.
Yep.
Thought he had a good game.
Yeah, he's also had a good start to the year. Gawn, Hogan, Jones and Petraka, and Oliver, have all started the year really well and are playing, close to their best footy.
Well, that is evident in the, Demonland Player of the Year votes that we've got.
Is Jesse leading?
Jesse is leading. I wouldn't have thought at the start of the year, if you would, sort of said, who do you think will be leading it? I wouldn't have had Jesse there, and that's not because I don't think he's any good. But, it's, I think, Jesse from Max, Jonesy, and then Clary and Petraka. They're 5 top players. Drunken 167, I'm not sure if you saw this, Grapeviney, I saw it on social media this week. The heat map, you familiar with the heat maps?
Yes.
Yes. Are you familiar with Josh Wagner's heat map from the game last week? Someone's put it up in the chat room at demonland.com/podcast. If you want to go and have a look at Wagner's heat map, it's fascinating viewing.
too hot to handle.
Yes.
It's basically.
Yes. All right. Well, did I miss any other players this week? I think we've discussed pretty much all of them. I thought, I'll go back, I thought Jeffy Garlett was a bit quiet. We discussed that brilliant bit of, interception play. But, have a look, he kicked 3 goals in the end. So he's doing exactly what a small forward should do. He was, when I say he was quiet in patches, but, still kicking 3 goals. And, he's doing exactly what he's paid to do. Oh, we didn't. Yes, Drunken 167. We haven't mentioned Lewis, with the exception of I think there was 1 or maybe 2 errant kicks. I thought he had had a great game. He was playing more on the wing rather than the sort of halfback, off the halfback. And as Drunken said in the chat room, he had 27 touches. So that's what we want to see from Lewis. So yeah, that'd be great. Coming up against his old side this week, so I'm sure he'll lift for
It's
that.
like anyone in the back line. The mistakes stand out because they end up costing goals, and I think at least there might have only been the one errant kick.
I think it was in the forward line anyway.
But it did cost us, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But look, he's for the most, I think the interesting thing with Lewis will be, I think the difference between his best and his worst footy is growing. And it'll just be a question of when is he no longer a value to the team and is sort of taking up someone's spot. So, yeah.
Well, it's not yet, so he's still there. He's not going anywhere for the moment.
No.
He does bring all that leadership as well. So, yep. All right, well, we can move on from...
He loses his feet. Can lose his feet far too easily sometimes. And it just looks like it's almost his default position on a loose ball is to go to ground. Having said that, he's played some good footy on the weekend. So
yeah, I was going to say we discussed our laps this week, so we don't need to talk about. There was an article about the D's having we're either lapsing or being lethal, and just got to sort of bridge that gap and shorten those lapses, and no doubt will be a difficult team to beat. I was having a look at the injury list, and with the exception of having almost two of our best 10 players on that injury list, we have a very small injury list. We've just
it's only Vanders and McKenna, isn't it?
Yeah.
Other than McDonald and Barney.
Yeah, and at the moment, I don't think McKenna would be knocking the door down. So it's Vanders. I think even at this stage, would be sort of, having to fight for that spot in the forward line with a number of other players. So we've got quite a healthy injury list.
Doesn't stop people from demanding Dave Misson's head.
Well,
so
we've only got two on there. These two are both saying 4 to 5 weeks, but with the injuries that they have, we don't know exactly how long that will be. Hopefully shorter than that. We've got a big game coming up this week. It'll really show, I think, where we're at. Last time we played them, again, we had one of those lapses. What was the score? I think we were down by about 36 points, I think, at one stage.
Came back in the third quarter.
Yeah, so I think we got to about 6 goals down or 5 goals down. But we did come back. We were a point down, and I think even in the last quarter, there was a point down at 3-quarter time. And in the last quarter, we actually got our noses in front before they steadied and kicked a couple, and then I think we got one back at the end to lose by 3 or 4 points. Don't want that happening again this week.
There's one big reason to win this week is that we're then 3-1, and that sets up the blockbuster against Richmond, which, given it's our home game, we need that Anzac Day game to be as big as possible. And if we lose to the Hawks, then it just takes a little bit of the polish off coming into the Richmond game and won't get the same billing that it will if we're 3-1.
Yeah, it'd be nice to win this week. Richmond play Brisbane. You'd think they will knock them off. They'll be 3-1. We'd be 3-1. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
It'll get absolutely hyped, out of the water if we're both 3-1, and then we can expect a huge crowd.
Well, one of the footy shows was talking about that being obviously a better game than the Essendon Collingwood one, and sort of that game shaping up as the two exciting teams of the comp. So yeah, it'd be great to get a bit of hype around a game, and yeah, it'd be great to get 80 plus 85 if we can. So let's get it. We've got one game in between then to talk about. And are you expecting changes this week?
It's going to be hard to change a side that won comfortably by 6+ goals. Again, it's hard to judge what happened at Casey because they had such an easy victory. It seems that Harley Ballock was in the best players. Sam Wiedemann took some big grabs or contested grabs, kicked a few goals, did some ruck work, all of which apparently was quite good. So
we they won by 100.
Will there be changes?
Well, we'll talk about first of all. We'll talk about the Casey game a little bit. We won by 107 points, admittedly against quite rubbish opposition. But Harley Ballock kicked 6, Wiedemann kicked 5.
Yep.
I mean, both of them are sort of knocking on the door. I don't think Harley will walk straight into a team. I think he's got to probably show, a bit more. But it is exciting. We've got sort of, I think we had 18 listed players play in that team, and that's a very good thing for a team like us who, is an up and coming team, to have all these guys knocking on the door and sort of wanting to perform to get in.
Yeah, look, they also mentioned in the review on the club website, mentioned that Brayshaw and Hannon both had good games, and I think Brayshaw was used in a tagging role,
yep,
which is a new role for him, and that then raises the question of will he come in this week and be used to tag Mitchell.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you think that was sort of a precursor to bring him in for this week and give him that responsibility?
Yeah, let's wait and see what Simon says.
Yes.
Basically, that's the game that we play. Waiting for 6:25 on a Thursday night.
Exactly. Well, to
see what Simon says.
It seems that Goodwin is picking teams based on the needs of the week, which is probably an interesting thing to talk about. Do you think you should pick teams based on, well, obviously form comes into it, but how much of it should be form? Do you keep a guy in that played a good game, but maybe there's not that job for him to do, and there's a guy like Brayshaw to come in? Would you, just say Harms had a good game, but they think that Brayshaw's probably a better player to sort of man up on Tom Mitchell? What do you think of that? That type of picking teams just based on?
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's a balance, isn't it? Because the fewer changes that you make, the more cohesive your team is, because you've got a great number of players playing with each other week in, week out. So,
well, I'm not talking about 6 in, 6 out.
No, I know, but if a player has sort of played, has generally played well, and then makes way for somebody else, players have to. Are required to play their roles, and if someone's role becomes more important than yours, then you might have to make way for a week. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, selection will certainly be interesting. What was the word of Jaden Hunt? Last time we played the Hawks, he sort of played a forward role. They sort of switched him up from the back line in the forward line, kicked 3 goals, 2.
Yep.
It was quite exciting, but obviously we know his form this year hasn't been great. First 2 weeks was dropped. Could you see a bit of dash coming in off the half back? Because, and I'll preface that because Hawthorn have quite a number of so small forwards. They've got that Puopolo, Impey, Bruce.
Yep.
There's a few of those sort of smaller guys.
Cyril.
How could I forget Cyril? Jed will probably go to Cyril. We've got to sort of match up to the team we're playing. They'll have that Sicily coming back in, so there's a big guy, Roughhead obviously. Be interesting sort of selection to see the way they go. That O'Brien plays in the back line now, doesn't he? O'Brien for Hawthorn. He's a backman.
Yep.
Be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd sort of said at the start of the year that we'd be going into round 4 and Hunt and Brayshaw would be in the 2s, you wouldn't really have. That'd be a bit of a shock, wouldn't it?
Oh, most definitely. It'd be a huge shock.
Hunt would have been in everybody's best 22 at the start of the year.
Yep.
And Brayshaw in many best 22s. So.
Just while I'm looking at the team from last year that we played, then there's one big out that we had last year that wasn't playing, and that's Big Maxi into the team.
If we play our best footy, we should beat them. And I don't know whether we will tag Mitchell or whether someone goes head to head with him and pays him half attention. I don't know. But if we play our best footy, we should beat Hawthorn and probably beat them comfortably.
Well, he does worry me, Mitchell. His stats are just sort of frightening. It's getting...
Yeah, but we've got a good midfield too, so, we've got a good enough midfield that we can go head-to-head with sides that have got that have also got good midfields, and I don't know that Hawthorn's is necessarily that deep beyond Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree.
But you're right, they've got those pacey, the Bruce and Isaac Smith, those runners
Smith,
who can expose us going the other way. So we're going to need to work hard.
Yep, we are, and most definitely. So as we said, no injury concerns. So a few guys performing at Casey. Selection table will be interesting this week. So watch this space, and we'll see what happens. But definitely a massive game, and it's one. Every week, obviously, we want to win, but this will really show us where we are going into that Tigers game, and and we'll talk about the Tigers game next week when we know where we're at on the ladder.
Hunt's really the interesting one, isn't he? Because let's assume he plays really great footy over the next 2 or 3 weeks for Casey, and he really is knocking down the door. But the structure of the back line with Frost in there is working. Who makes way for Hunt?
Who indeed?
If he gets his skates back on.
Look, having selection table headaches is a beautiful thing. I've said it almost every week this year, and it would be a good thing for the team if he's bashing the door down and can't get in. Who goes out? It's all comes down to form, I guess. If the need isn't there for him to come in to take someone or bring a bit of extra dash, then he's going to have to wait his turn. Good problem to have for a team, and if we can stay relatively injury free, and that's not a given for any team, then a good thing. I wanted to talk about an article. I'm not sure. Did you read the Gawney's Herald Sun? He I think he does once a
Yes.
month a thing. So you know the names Barassi, Flower, Lion. I'm sure you know a guy, David Neitz. Well, they're all champions of the club. Where does Nathan Jones sit among that group? According to Maxi, he should be up there with the greats of the club. He's won, you know, quite a number of best and fairest. I think one more
3. Yep.
puts him equal with who's it put him equal with
Jimmy, probably,
Jimmy.
I
Yeah,
think.
I think it puts him with Jimmy. Yeah, we didn't mention Jimmy. Yes, we didn't even mention Jimmy in that. He's definitely among the greats of the club. Yeah, well, Gawny thinks very highly of Jonesy, so you know, I don't know if he's in that league. He's knocking on the door. I love the guy. Bleeds red and blue. You know, could have left.
August 20, 2006. Remember where you were?
Well,
The fair chance Melbourne Demons will at least remember.
That's what happened when you open a browser and it automatically plays a clip. But yeah, Jonesy, you know, could have
Was
left.
that the late, great Drew Morford?
No, it wasn't. That is someone from Fox Footy.
Right.
I opened that Herald Sun article and that started playing. Yeah, where's Jonesy sort of sit? Could have left the club.
Look, I know what Max is saying.
Yeah.
It's too early to make the call, though. You can't make that call until he's finished, basically.
Yeah.
As a player in football terms, you know, he doesn't rank with those named. You know, Flower was one of the all-time greats and was poetry in motion. Jimmy revolutionised the role of the ruckman, and I think you could safely say that, you know, Gary Lyon and David Neitz were perhaps better players than Jones. But in terms of being a part of the fabric of the club and a club identity, I definitely think Jones is up there and will be up there with them when his career is said and done, particularly if, like Robbie, he has a sort of a fairy tale end to it. I mean, if we play finals this year and God forbid if we ever win a premiership in the next couple of years, then his is going to be one of the all-time great stories at the club, and it'll be up there with Jimmy and Robbie, because not only has he improved himself as a player, you know, quite markedly from you know, when he first made his debut, 11 or 12 years ago now. But the fact that he was around during the darkest days, and basically, well, he replaced Trengove and Grimes, you know, at the heart of the dark times. To go from there to a fairy tale finish would, as I say, rival any other of the great stories in the history of the club.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I loved Max's line in there talking about Jonesy. Where he was a young fella, rough boy from Mount Eliza, whose hair was gone by 11 and had tats covering his skin before puberty arrived. I just love Max's. I just love his style, everything about him, and he certainly loves Nathan Jones. And yep, I hope they do it for him. You know, couldn't get a more deserving bloke, and you know, as I said, bleeds the red and the blue.
Yeah, look, you know, we really should be playing finals this year. which will be a big milestone on his journey, even though he did play finals in his first year. But yeah, I mean, imagine if we did make it to the big day, and imagine him holding up the cup. That's
just made me
yeah.
weak at the knees.
Yes.
Oh, wouldn't that be something? Yeah, that would be a very drunken podcast, you would think, on the Wednesday after. That's if we have a voice. we'll
Yep.
think of something. There was, I'm not sure if the article was this, the whole thing about being patient with Lever. I think we might have talked about it this week, and I just read just before, I think Lever was on one of the footy shows tonight, and he sort of said that he sort of admitted that he's he's playing below expectations, and he's looking forward to sort of start performing a bit better. He said individually it wasn't what I'd like to start my career off at Melbourne. He says he thinks that his first half against Brisbane was back to the way that he likes to play, and again on the weekend he found a little bit of form, but there's obviously massive steps that he can take. He then said, you put so much pressure on yourself to perform every week, and he's no different. He'd really like to play his role every week and try to dominate, and that's what he tries to do. He says, I think in the last 2 weeks I've been happy, but I think there's another gear that he can go to. And he also said, I try not to put too much pressure on myself because in the end, one player can't really make the finals for the team. And I think people have to remember that there's no one player that's going to come to the club and be the saviour. And I think a lot of people who thought that he's going to come in and that's going to be the difference, but he's just another cog in this wheel that we've created on this car that's hopefully a Ferrari and not a lemon.
You're absolutely right that some people thought that he was going to arrive at Melbourne and magically transform the back line, and that all of a sudden, it'd be impossible to score more than a handful of goals against us. But that's not the case, and in reality was never really going to be the case. As we can see, the coaching, the football department is still, I wouldn't say experimenting, but perhaps getting the mix right still, and it might change from game to game. And as he acknowledged in that article, I think he's going to learn more and grow as a defender, particularly in the one-on-one stuff, and that's where he aspires to be, in the Rance and McGovern type range that can intercept as well as play one-on-one. Yeah. So I am firmly in the absolutely not even slightly concerned about Lever camp. Some of the crap that's being said about him on the board is humorous.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned it last week that you can't judge the deal based on the 2-3 games that he's played. We're just going to have to wait a couple of years, and then we can judge whether the decision was to get him for what we got him for is right or not. As you said, he has conceded he needs to improve that one-on-one game, and he says that he did benefit from Frost coming back in, and he can sort of play the way like his role at Adelaide, but then wants to improve that part of his game. And I've got no doubt he will. He'll find his feet, and he'll be a great player for the Melbourne Football Club, as well as being, I think, in the end, will be a great leader for the club. And you can't you can't buy that leadership, but I think we did.
Yes, you can.
It appears you can. We'll see. Time will be the judge of that. Anything else?
Go on.
What
did you think of the biting?
Oh, yeah, that's
3 weeks. 3 weeks for biting.
I think it's pretty dirty thing to do.
It was a soft bite. It's
I
more of
don't
a
care.
love bite.
I think it doesn't matter if you break the skin. There's all. Players have to go off with the blood rule, and if you're piercing someone's skin with saliva, there's bodily fluids being exchanged there. It's really not a good look. I think it deserved a harsher penalty. We've been penalised worse for a lot less. Yeah, I
Chris
think
Lewis
it's gotta be standard.
Chris Lewis got 3 weeks for biting Todd Viney back in the day.
Yeah, but
if you remember,
in those days, biting was more socially acceptable. I think it's a bad look. I think they should have made an example of him, and he should have got more for it. I don't care how sorry he is. I think our good friend Super Mikado said something funny, and I'll probably butcher it in the retelling of it, because I can't even remember what he said. But he said something to the effect that what was his name? It's not Conor McGregor. That's the McKenna. Yeah, Conor McGregor's the UFC guy. That he have to write 50 articles like Tom Bugg did to redeem himself in order to get back in the good graces of everyone. I think they should have made an example of him. He should have got 5 weeks for that. Might be a bit harsh, but I think that sends a message that biting is unacceptable. Look, I don't think people are going to start biting because they know they're going to get away with it, but it's not a good look.
Most of the commentary from commentators and players has been exactly what you said, that he should have got more.
Yeah, it's ugly. And
do you know that Mick Malthouse never forgave Todd Viney? If you remember, Todd had to go and get an AIDS test.
Yes, he did. And I think that made it...
I think Malthouse thought that we sort of leaked that to the press and made a sort of a big deal out of it. And I don't think... I can't remember where I heard it, but it was a couple of years ago, and you could tell that he Malthouse, was still bitter about it. And this is something that happened in 1990 or 91, and I wonder whether he still resents Todd Viney to this very day over it.
Well, let's just hope he's not taking his anger at Todd out on Jack, because it's his sins of the father and all that.
Yep.
Because we can't take calls, I'll just read a couple of the things in the chat room. Don't Make Me Angry has said Gus should come in for Vince. What do you think of that, Vince? We didn't talk about him. I think he kicked a goal early. I think was he playing more forward this week? Sort of playing around a bit, but I've always said Vince should be played in the forward line. I think he was playing there early, kicked a goal.
Yeah, it might have been because I think Lewis spent a bit of time on the wing.
Yeah.
Maybe he and Lewis were perhaps swapping.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bernie, he kicked one from about 50, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or just inside 50.
Yeah.
And as you regularly point out, he's generally a good.
He can find the goals.
He's generally a good goal scorer. Yep.
Don't Make Me Angry has also said love the Bugg and Kent aggression, and yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we need the mongrel. Need a bit of that aggression. Yep. So yeah, I like it. Grapeviney, is there anything else that we've missed? What's happening on Demonland? Anything else that we need to bring up? Anything interesting? Talked about the golden era of Ruckman a little bit.
Well, I noticed the Ollie Wines thread, or an Ollie Wines thread is back.
Yes.
And I think there's all conjecture. I think he's up for contract renewal at the moment.
Yep.
And I actually dug back into the Demonland archives today, and I nearly bumped the Ollie Wines Lounge, which,
Yes.
if you remember, was created for the specific purpose of whinging about Ollie Wines and reminiscing about how we didn't select him.
Yep.
And even rumour mongering that Todd wanted Ollie but was overruled by Mark Neild,
Yeah.
a story that's never been confirmed by anyone ever, but which is just accepted fact. But I left it. In the doldrums there, and I noted that the last time that thread had been revived was 2 years ago, which is when Ollie's contract was last up for renewal. So perhaps we should just merge the current thread into the existing Ollie Wines Lounge, and that Wines is obviously spelt with an H. For the express purpose of whining.
Yes, I like it. Well, you would think they're going to probably offer him the captaincy to try and keep him, I think. Would you take him in a heartbeat if he wanted to come?
Look, I think it's too early to say on the Tumpus wine situation, so I think we just need to sit back and see how Jimmy Tumpus goes over the next couple of years. But Ollie's probably just ahead at the moment.
Yeah, I can't see you, so I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not. Even though I can hear the dripping through the microphone. Yeah.
Look, any club would take him. He's a brute. He's an absolute brute, but he's not really what we require. We tend to have the brutish side of things covered. We really need a good runner rather than an Ollie Wines. But he's a great player. There's no doubt about that. He has been. He's like Jack Viney since day one. They've both been very good players.
Do you think we'll be in line to sort of go after someone at the end of this year? Or do we not have any currency? It's very early days, obviously. And do we even have any currency, with the exception of having to give up somebody? I don't think we've got the draft currency, and I don't think we're going to... I don't know if we would dip into the... I don't think we can. You can't trade 2 years in a row your first... What's the story there with the trading first round picks?
Oh, couldn't tell you. You'd have to...
Whispering Jack is...
You'd have to get Whispering Jack on for all of that.
Yeah. I don't think...
But there is a restriction on the number of those deals that you can do in a certain time frame.
I don't think we can give up the next number one pick. So I don't know if we're going to have currency unless we do offload players as well. And there's not really players that we would want to lose, even if it does bring someone in. And I mean, you can every year on Demonland, people package a couple of, couple of players who are higher up the list, thinking that giving 4 of those guys to a team will get you, get you a Gaff or something, or a Sloan, but that's not going to work.
Are we still allowed to offer Matt Jones as part of any deal? Matt was always the add-on.
Yeah.
In those scenarios, wasn't he? To package him up with anyone else.
Yeah. Well, I think Demonlanders at the time always sort of like to do that, but yeah. Don't Make Me Angry says Viney's foot is getting better. Well, yes, I hope it is. We really need that. He's on track. Memberships. I see we've broken the 40,000 mark. As of this evening, we're 40,012 members. Almost a month ahead of last year. We reached 40,083 on May 7, 2017. So I don't know. I'd say we'd still sell a few memberships in the coming weeks, particularly if we win. But yeah, do you think we can make that 45,000 mark this year?
Yeah, potentially. Potentially, if we win the next couple of weeks and have a good win against the Tigers, the membership cutoff isn't until June, I don't think. So there's still a fair way to go. Having said that, most of the people who join at the ground tend to do that in the first few weeks of the season, don't they?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Like you see huge queues in rounds 1, 2 and 3, and they sort of get smaller as the season goes on.
Yeah, I've never understood those queues in this day and age. You'd think most people would
Yeah,
just
I
jump
know.
online. I wouldn't line up before the game. I'd just get on the internet and buy it there and then. But I guess
I once had to line up because I bought guest passes for somebody.
yeah,
And I was there like an hour early, and people must miss the first at least quarter, if not half, because it takes a while.
well, I guess they do want the membership to actually get into the ground, so that's maybe why they line up.
Yeah, well, that's true, but you're right. I don't know why people don't do it digitally. One question we didn't that was raised earlier that we should or could discuss was asked by Danelska, and that's where is Billy Stretch at? Because he's well down the pecking order at the moment, isn't he?
Well, I'm not watching Casey at the moment. I've been sort of on the road, so I've only been able to see the D's. How's his form tracking in there? I haven't
heard his name mentioned.
So that's quite telling. I like Billy when he's in the team, but at the moment he's not in the best 22. He can play best 22 footy, and he's just now another guy knocking on the door and finding it difficult to get in. And we know he can.
The problem is
play.
he's not knocking on the door.
No, that's the thing. He's sort of back in that line, getting good problem to have, because we know he can perform, but he's got to earn his spot in there. And if you do earn your way in, you got to perform. And Dean Kent showed what you've got to do to keep in there. And if you don't do that, Hannon was in the team earlier and he wasn't doing it. Jaden Hunt wasn't doing it, and you see what happens when you've got guys knocking on the door. What happens to you if you don't perform? So anyone who gets their opportunity has to, hit it out of the park. Because if you don't, then you're taking the long trip down the freeway to Casey, I guess.
Yep.
So that's memberships. Sign up if you haven't. I dare say anyone who listens to this podcast probably has a membership, so that's probably not a problem. Just going back to Casey for a sec, I think all of our recruits were playing this week, and from what I heard and from what I read on Demonland, and Demonland's a great place if you are listening to this to stay up to date with all the Casey stuff, because we've got guys who go to the games, and it's a good way to find out information about that. But Oscar Baker apparently had a great first half, and it was a hot day, so I think he sort of slowed down a bit at the end, but that's a great sign. Looking forward to seeing him playing at some point this year. I heard that Harrison Petty, and this is Whispering Jack, told me that people were very impressed with his game. I don't think he had a lot of stats, particularly because the ball wasn't down in the back line too much, but people said what he did looked great, so that's someone to look forward to.
There were one or two posters on Demonland who made that observation as well, so that's pleasing to hear.
Yeah. Looking forward
and to say that he shows plenty of promise.
Although we have had many players showing plenty of promise at Casey, so let's hope that's not one of the one of our old I can't tell you the number of times I've read Casey threads going back years and back to Sandringham when we were with them and hearing about players that are going to be great. But that's good to hear that he's showing a lot of promise. Spargo got suspended, I heard, so he won't be playing this week. Shows a bit of aggression. We like the aggression. We don't like players getting suspended, but yeah, good to hear. And obviously Bailey Fritsch, our other one, is playing in the seniors. So, yep, all promising signs. Predictions for this week. Do you have a prediction? Do you think we can knock off the Hawks?
Yep. It's funny, one of the media outlets referred to the Hawks as one of our bogey teams. Well, and I thought, well, we only beat them. We beat them at the end of 2016.
Yeah.
So it's not like we've got this huge, terrible record against them. And
but
really, everyone's our bogey side if you're looking at our recent history, because we've been so bloody hopeless.
I will say, bogey team. Some of our performances against Hawthorn in the last 10 years, and take it with a grain of salt because the last 10 years we've been crap, but they've thumped us a lot of times in that period. So
yeah, they've won 25 premierships as well during that time. So
exactly.
You're talking about one of the best ever sides playing against one of the worst ever sides.
Exactly. So I would like to do what they have done to us. I can't see us beating them by 100 points. I don't think our consistency is there yet, but I'd like to teach them a football lesson. That would be nice. But I'm not as confident that we'll do that. I'd like to get the win first, and we'll take anything that happens.
Look, I don't think we've played our best footy yet.
No.
We've played some decent footy, but I don't think we've gotten anywhere near our best, to be honest. So I think once it really clicks, it'll really be exciting.
There's a thread on Demon Land, a predictions thread for this week, and I was scrolling through it. There's a lot of confident people on Demon Land. I need some of their confidence. A lot of people thinking we're gonna belt them.
As George on the outer just said, he wants to put Jeff Kennett back in his box. And all Melbourne supporters should agree with that, because Kennett at times has called for our club to be made extinct, basically. So, yeah, couldn't agree more, George.
Yes, and I will also mention if you do like reading a summary of our games, George on the outer, who's in our chat room at the moment, always week in, week out, writes a fantastic article about the game. So thank you, George, for that. Anything else? So I think we've covered everything, unless you have other pressing issues you want to bring up.
Nope.
We're
all good.
We're all good. Well, that's been another edition of the Demon Land podcast as I bring up the sound of our fantastic music. Thank you for joining us, everyone who was in the chat room. Thank you to anyone who is listening to this on replay. And I will mention, I made a big boo-boo the last 2 weeks. I've been on the road. I've had a laptop. And when I've been uploading the show to iTunes, which a lot of people listen on SoundCloud, which I have a link on the site, but more people download through iTunes or other podcast catching apps. And so I uploaded the shows, and I named the files Demon Land, whatever number of the podcast it is. And I uploaded them, but the podcast apps look for a different thing. They look for Demon Land Podcast something, something, something. So I named the files incorrectly. So when people in iTunes tried to get episode 33 and 34 the last 2 weeks, it was just giving them an error message. So it was a bad link, basically. So I've got to apologise for that. Someone on Facebook alerted me to that today, that there was an error, and I quickly found the reason why. And that definitely won't happen again. So, sorry, my bad.
Apology accepted.
All right, thank you very much. So our stats for the last 2 weeks, Grapevine, I share the stats with Grapevine every couple of weeks. They might not be so great for the last 2 podcasts because people couldn't listen to it. And these type of podcasts aren't the type of podcasts you go back and listen to. They're quite topical at the time. I can't see how someone would want to listen to round 4 from last year. I don't think we're...
The exception to that, of course, is the Alan Jakovic podcast.
Interviews
which I
aside.
must say I listened to again a couple of weeks ago.
Did he get our names right this time? I think for most of the interview he was calling you,
he was
me,
mixing
and
us
me,
up,
you,
yeah. With just the stats that you mentioned, is a Champion Data that keep stats on our podcast, or do we use one of their rivals?
We do use one of their rivals. I count them as
we won't mention them.
As people download them. I'm keeping a pen and pad next to my bed and just take it. No, yeah, quite healthy, the stats on iTunes. A lot of people downloading it that way, and when I get back, I'll have a look what happened. I don't think we'll have any stats because if people couldn't get the episodes, they couldn't get them. So, apologise for that if you're trying to get it. You can listen to them now if you want to hear about our fantastic loss to Geelong and our great win over Brisbane. Go back and have a listen to them if you couldn't listen to it, because I'm sure it's riveting listening as they are every single week. So we'll be back next week. I'll be back in the Demonland podcast studio as the song finishes up. We'll be back next week on our home ground. My home ground anyway. Thank you, Grapevine, for joining me again, and we'll be back next week. Go Demons.
Go D's.